He was told he'd never become a father. Yet there he stood, breathless, holding not one but two newborns, twins, wrapped in soft blankets, their cries echoing a miracle science said could never happen. Lucian Blake, tech billionaire, lived behind glass walls and sterile numbers, until one night with a woman he barely knew shattered those barriers. A janitor, a virgin, a moment of tenderness that turned his world upside down. But when her body began and a doctor whispered what was never meant to be, he had to ask, was it real, or was hope playing cruel games again? Hello, my beautiful and wonderful and amazing family. Before I begin this very beautiful story, please tell us where you're watching from in the comment below. It strengthens our bond and makes us connected. In case you haven't subscribed yet, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button before you continue. Do you believe in miracles? And if love comes wrapped in secrets, can it still be true? Now let the story begin. The building was a monolith of glass and ambition, a place where every detail, from polished brass door handles to automated espresso machines, screamed precision and power. Yet amid all that wealth, a soft voice echoed in the empty halls, delicate as a thread of silk. Ariana's broom swept rhythmically across the marble tiles, the sound almost musical in the stillness of the night. Her navy blue uniform hung loosely over her petite frame, and her hands, calloused from years of work, moved with quiet confidence. She hummed as she cleaned, unaware that her soft lullaby drifted upwards through the floors like incense. To most, she was invisible, but not to Lucian. High above, on the top floor where the city looked like a field of scattered stars, Lucian Blake leaned against the window. The man who once dominated tech conferences and closed billion-dollar deals now stood still, paralyzed not by numbers, but by a silent grief only he knew how to carry. In his hand, a manila envelope. Inside it, a report that felt more like a verdict. Patient is infertile. 3 words that stripped away everything. He had spent his life building an empire from nothing, rising from a modest childhood to owning half the skyline. But legacy? Bloodline? That chapter, it seemed, had been stolen from him before he could even turn the page. He poured himself a drink, the clink of ice and crystals sounding louder than it should. It wasn't the money he feared losing. It was meaning. It was the ache that came from knowing he had no one to pass his name to. No son, no daughter, no future. He turned from the window, hoping distraction would grant him mercy. But fate had other plans. Downstairs, Ariana continued her work, humming softly. Her song, one her mother used to sing before the cancer took her, had no name, just feeling. She moved from floor to floor with the gentle certainty of someone who'd learned early how to survive. Her dreams were simple: help her younger sister through school, maybe own a small flat someday, perhaps tend a few flowers on the balcony. She wasn't looking for love, yet love was looking for her. As the elevator dinged open behind her, Ariana straightened instinctively. Her grip tightened on the broom. She never expected anyone on this floor at this hour, let alone him. Lucian stepped out. He wore a dark jacket over an open-collared shirt, and though his eyes were shadowed with fatigue, there was something alert about his gaze. He noticed her, not just as a cleaner, but as a presence. Ariana's breath caught. She'd seen him before, of course, from afar. Photos in magazines, company newsletters. She never imagined she'd stand close enough to see the faint scar near his jawline, or the weariness hiding beneath his confidence. "I didn't mean to startle you," Lucian said, his voice low, smooth. "It's all right," she replied, clutching the broomstick a little tighter. He took a few steps forward, then paused. "Were you singing?" Ariana blinked. "Just humming," she said quickly. "Nothing really. I thought it was beautiful." The words fell between them like a confession. Ariana's cheeks flushed. Compliments were rare in her world, especially from men who wore suits like armor. She looked down, unsure how to respond. Lucian glanced at the exit, then back at her. "Do you have a moment? There's a cafe down the road that stays open late. I could use a walk." Ariana stared, stunned. Was he asking her? Sure," she said, uncertain if she'd regret this or remember it forever. Outside, the city glimmered beneath a low sky. They walked side by side, the silence between them oddly comforting. Ariana watched him from the corner of her eye, his steps precise yet casual, his hands shoved into his coat pockets like he was trying to keep the world out. She couldn't imagine what brought him here, what burden led him to seek a stranger's presence at this hour. At the cafe, they took a corner booth. A candle flickered between them, casting gentle shadows. Lucian ordered chamomile tea. Ariana followed his lead, unsure how to act, or even why he had chosen her. But as they spoke, she forgot to worry. She told him about her sister, how she worked nights so the girl could stay in school, how their parents had passed when she was still learning how to grieve. He listened, truly listened, his expression shifting from polite interest to deep empathy. He shared fragments of his life too, his childhood in a cramped apartment with a father who worked 3 jobs, his obsession with machines and coding, his late wife whose memory he didn't dare elaborate on. Every story felt like an offering. Ariana nodded slowly. Sometimes I think people like us, we meet pain early. Lucian smiled faintly, and some of us turn it into strength. The moment hung between them, vulnerable, fragile, real. They walked back slower than they came. When they reached the entrance of the building, Lucian stopped. "May I kiss you?" he asked. Ariana's heart skipped. "Yes," she whispered. His kiss was tender, deliberate. He touched her as if she were made of stars, and he had never dared look up before. That night, Ariana returned to her apartment in a daze, her lips still tingling. She touched them, smiling like someone who discovered a secret. She didn't know what would come of this, or if she was foolish to hope. But for the first time in a long while, she did. Over the next few weeks, Lucian found himself inventing reasons to be near her. A forgotten file to retrieve, a late-night inspection. Ariana, too, found her shifts mysteriously rescheduled so their paths might cross. It wasn't professional, but neither of them cared. He brought her warm croissants on rainy mornings. She slipped tiny notes into his briefcase, quotes from poems she liked or lines from lullabies. He found himself reading them in board meetings, smiling without meaning to. One evening, she told him about her dream to open a small daycare someday. He stared at her in disbelief. "You want to spend your life helping children?" he asked. Ariana nodded. "They're the closest thing to hope." His throat tightened. She didn't know the irony she had just spoken into the air. As their connection deepened, so did their intimacy. Yet Lucian hesitated. He wanted her, yes, but more than that, he feared breaking her illusion of who he was. He feared her smile would fade the moment she realized he could never give her a family. He held the truth inside like a bitter coin, too heavy to throw away, too damning to show. But Ariana noticed. She always noticed. One afternoon, as they shared a simple meal in the staff garden, she reached across and touched his hand. "You don't have to be perfect with me," she said. Lucian's fingers tightened around hers. He looked at her, this woman in a borrowed coat, whose hands smelled like citrus cleaner and whose eyes held galaxies of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could hold the truth too. The hallway felt different after that afternoon in the garden. It wasn't just Ariana's heart that beat a little faster each time the elevator chimed. It was the entire atmosphere, charged with anticipation, like a note held just before it breaks into melody. Lucian had said little during that shared lunch, but the way his fingers lingered on hers said more than any confession could. She knew something sat heavily on his spirit, and though she didn't press, she remained present, steadfast in her quiet empathy. He noticed that. That night, he invited her up, not with grand promises, not with fanfare. Just a simple request. "Would you stay a while?" Ariana hesitated for a moment, fingers tightening on the strap of her bag. Then she nodded. Lucian's penthouse wasn't what she expected. Yes, it was spacious, tastefully furnished, with leather chairs and floor-to-ceiling windows. But it was also quiet, almost solemn, like a museum curated by a man who didn't know what to display anymore. He disappeared briefly and returned in a soft gray sweater, hair slightly tousled. "I made dinner," he said shyly. "I wasn't sure what you liked, so I kept it simple." Ariana laughed softly. "Anything warm is a treat." They ate on the couch, rice, steamed vegetables, and roasted chicken. No candlelight, no extravagant gestures, just 2 people navigating silence and slow glances. Lucian stole looks at her every few moments, at the way she twirled her fork absent-mindedly, how her gaze drifted to the window when she wasn't speaking. He studied her the way a sculptor studies clay, recognizing something beautiful, not yet molded, but already complete. After they finished eating, Ariana stood to stretch, and Lucian offered his hand. "Dance with me," he said. She blinked. "Here?" He nodded. "Music's already playing." He wasn't wrong. A gentle piano melody played low from unseen speakers. Hesitantly, Ariana stepped into his arms. He held her close but not possessively, like someone afraid to crush something precious. She rested her head against his chest and listened to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. They swayed slowly, her fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt. "I never imagined my life like this," she whispered. He tilted his head. "Like what?" "Being here, with you." "Feeling this way." Lucian exhaled. "Neither did I." The room melted around them, the city beyond the windows disappearing into a blur of lights. There was only the warmth between their bodies, the unspoken need, the thrum of connection that deepened with every breath. Ariana looked up, and her eyes searched his. Lucian brought a hand to her cheek, caressing it with a touch so gentle it could have been mistaken for air. "You're beautiful," he said, the words catching in his throat. Ariana flushed and smiled, shy as moonlight. She lowered her gaze, but he tilted her chin and kissed her. It began softly but quickly became something more, a hunger restrained too long. Her lips parted with a quiet sigh, inviting him deeper. His hands moved up her back, tracing the arch of her spine, pulling her close until there was no space between them. She clung to him, trembling, not from fear, but from wonder. Lucian's fingers skimmed the hem of her dress, his mouth trailing down her neck. "You can tell me to stop," he whispered. "I don't want you to," she replied, voice low. In that moment, something shifted. Not just lust, but surrender. She was choosing him, trusting him, not because he was powerful or wealthy or lonely, but because he had seen her when no one else ever had. Lucian lifted her gently into his arms and carried her to his bedroom. The bed was made, though clearly never slept in. Ariana lay back on the silken sheets, heart racing. She had never been with a man before. She had never even kissed anyone before Lucian. Every part of this was new, terrifying, exhilarating. Lucian stood over her, unbuttoning his shirt with deliberate patience. His chest was sculpted, his skin warm with heat and tension. She could see the outline of faint scars, remnants of a life that hadn't been kind. When he saw her eyes linger on them, he hesitated. But Ariana sat up and placed her hand on his chest. "You're human," she said gently. "I like that." He smiled, soft, vulnerable. "So are you." He helped her out of her dress slowly, carefully, never rushing. Her skin flushed under his gaze and she shivered as cool air kissed her shoulders. But she didn't cover herself. She wanted him to see her, truly, fully. She was his. And in that sacred silence, he became hers. Lucian kissed her again, deeper this time. His hands roamed gently, memorizing her curves. Ariana gasped softly as he touched the swell of her breasts, the dip of her waist, the inside of her thighs. She closed her eyes, body responding to every caress with blooming warmth. He slid a hand between her legs, fingers exploring her slowly. Ariana moaned, soft and breathless. Her hips bucked slightly, and he steadied her with a kiss on the temple. "Are you sure?" She nodded, barely able to speak. "I want this, with you." Lucian positioned himself between her legs, easing forward, guiding himself into her with care. Ariana's eyes widened at the first sensation of him inside her. It was pressure, fullness, and unfamiliar pleasure all at once. She whimpered, clutching his shoulders, and he paused. "We'll go slow," he murmured. "We'll go together." Their rhythm was gentle at first, soft, sweet, measured. He whispered reassurances as he moved within her, kissing her with reverence. Ariana clung to him like a lifeline, legs wrapping around his waist. The pain faded into pleasure, deep and dizzying. She cried out softly, not from fear but from the beauty of it. Lucian held her tighter, overwhelmed by the purity of the moment. She was untouched, unguarded, giving him everything without restraint. He'd had lovers before, but nothing had ever felt like this, like rebirth. Their bodies moved in sync, driven by instinct and feeling. Ariana began to arch into him, eyes fluttering shut, her breath quickening. She felt herself falling, spiraling into something she didn't have words for. Lucian groaned as she clenched around him, and his movements grew more urgent. "I'm close," he breathed, voice ragged. Ariana's head tilted back. "I am too," she whispered. Together, they tumbled into ecstasy, her moan like music, his release shuddering through him as he buried his face in her neck. They clung to each other as their bodies trembled, hearts pounding in the quiet aftermath. Neither spoke for a while. Lucian lay beside her, arm draped around her waist, breathing uneven. Ariana stared at the ceiling, blinking back tears. Not from sadness, but from something she couldn't explain. He kissed her shoulder. "You okay?" She nodded. "Better than okay." They stayed like that for a long time. Bodies tangled, warmth shared, breathing steadying. Eventually, Ariana drifted into sleep, curled into his side. Lucien remained awake, watching her. Her face was peaceful, her lips parted just slightly. He had no idea what this meant. No plan, no strategy. But for once, he didn't care. That night, Lucien Blake, billionaire, tech visionary, supposed master of control, surrendered to a feeling he hadn't known he was capable of any more: hope. The morning after their night together, Ariana stirred to the scent of coffee and the faint sound of footsteps across hardwood floors. She stretched, sunlight caressing her skin through the large window as Lucien entered the bedroom holding a tray. He looked almost nervous. "I didn't want to wake you," he said softly, placing the tray on the nightstand. "But I thought you might like breakfast." Ariana smiled, the corners of her eyes crinkling. "You made this?" "Sort of," he confessed, chuckling. "The kitchen helped. But the toast is mine." She took a bite and laughed. "It's perfect." Lucien sat on the edge of the bed, watching her. Something about the way she moved, the way she smiled with sleepy eyes, made the cold edges of his world feel warmer. And yet, behind that warmth, something inside him still ached, a wound she didn't know existed. Later that day, as they sat side by side in his private garden, Ariana nestled under a blanket, sipping warm cider. Lucien's demeanor changed. His gaze, usually so focused, turned distant. "What is it?" she asked gently. He hesitated. "There's something you should know," he said, voice tight. Ariana set down her mug. "Okay." Lucien's hands tightened into fists on his lap. "I was married once." She nodded, listening. "She was brilliant, driven. She helped me build everything you see. But she got sick. It happened so quickly. One week we were planning a vacation, and the next—" His voice faltered. She was gone. Ariana reached over, covering his hand with her own. "I'm so sorry." He looked away, then back at her. "We tried to have children. We wanted that more than anything. But it never happened. After the tests, the doctor told me the truth." "What truth?" she asked softly. "I can't have children." Ariana's heart clenched. He continued, his voice hoarse. "It broke me in ways I didn't understand. I buried myself in work. Success became a substitute for a family I'd never have." Silence settled between them like falling ash. Ariana didn't speak. Instead, she turned toward him, eyes wet, and pressed her lips to the back of his hand. "You're not broken," she whispered. Lucien stared at her, something unreadable flashing across his face. "But if I can't give you a family—" She cut him off. "You already gave me something more. You gave me you." He pulled her into his arms, clutching her tightly. It was the first time in years he cried without shame. Days turned into weeks. They didn't talk about children again. Instead, they leaned into each other, into moments, evening walks, quiet dinners, late-night jazz humming through the penthouse. Ariana brought laughter. Lucien brought peace. But beneath it all, a quiet change had begun. One evening, Ariana paused while cleaning her tiny apartment. Her hands, usually steady, trembled. A strange wave of nausea rippled through her. She gripped the counter, waiting for it to pass. At first, she dismissed it. Maybe she was tired. Maybe it was stress. But when the sickness returned again and again, doubt gave way to suspicion. She stared at the small calendar on her fridge, counting days, then counting again. Her breath caught. Could it be? That night, after Lucien fell asleep beside her, Ariana slipped quietly into the bathroom. Her hands shook as she opened the box. The test was small, simple, 2 lines. She watched as one pink line appeared, and then another. Her knees buckled. She sat on the floor, holding the stick in trembling fingers, breath frozen in her chest. The quiet hum of the world around her blurred beneath the roaring in her ears. She was pregnant. The words felt unreal, impossible, but they were true. By some miracle, her body held life. Lucien's life. When she finally emerged from the bathroom, Lucien was sitting up, rubbing his eyes. "Are you okay?" Ariana didn't answer right away. She climbed onto the bed, still clutching the test. Her eyes met his, wide with wonder and fear. "Lucien," she whispered, "I'm pregnant." He blinked, as if the sentence hadn't registered. Then he sat straighter. What? I took the test twice. I'm sure. Silence. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Ariana's heart raced. Say something. He stood abruptly, pacing. His hands tangled in his hair. This isn't possible, he muttered. I was told. I know, she said quietly. But it's real. Lucien turned to face her, eyes burning with emotion. Are you absolutely sure? She nodded. I wouldn't say it if I wasn't. He sank to the bed beside her, burying his face in his hands. Ariana reached out, laying a gentle hand on his shoulder. I know this changes everything, she said. But it's not a bad thing. It's a blessing. He looked up, eyes glassy. I don't know how to process this. Then don't do it alone, she whispered. We'll figure it out. Together. That word, together, wrapped around his fear like a balm. Slowly, he nodded. The following week, they visited a doctor to confirm the pregnancy. Ariana lay on the exam table, Lucien gripping her hand tightly. When the monitor beeped, a soft, rhythmic thrum echoed through the room. There's one heartbeat, the doctor said. Then another. Ariana gasped. Lucien froze. Twins, the doctor smiled. Lucien blinked rapidly, tears filling his eyes. Ariana's lip quivered. She turned to look at him, her heart racing. We're having twins, she said, voice full of awe. Lucien stood there for a long time, hand on her belly, listening to the steady drumming of their children's hearts. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His tears said everything. In the days that followed, something changed in him. Lucien began to smile more easily, laugh more freely. He surprised Ariana with a small bouquet of white tulips one evening, and told her it reminded him of her quiet strength. He had the nursery repainted himself, soft yellow with silver stars. He ordered a custom crib for twins and filled it with plush animals he picked out personally. Ariana watched him in amazement. The man who once believed life had no more room for miracles now hummed to lullabies as he worked. They made love often, tenderly, reverently, each time more meaningful than the last. Yet even amid the joy, Lucien had moments of stillness, moments when fear crept back in. One evening, Ariana found him alone in his study, staring at a photo of his late wife. She walked in silently and placed her hands on his shoulders. I loved her, he said, voice low, but I never knew how to let go. She's part of you, Ariana whispered. She always will be. But that doesn't mean you don't deserve a new beginning. Lucien turned to her, cupped her growing belly, and rested his forehead against hers. I'm terrified, he admitted. So am I, she whispered. But maybe we can be brave together. And so they were. Through the early nausea, the doctor visits, the cravings, the midnight talks, they were brave together. Spring brought more than just warmth to the city. It brought life. Ariana's cheeks flushed with new color. Her steps softened into grace. Lucien noticed how the sun seemed to follow her, how strangers on the street would smile when she passed, unaware that they were bearing witness to a quiet miracle. The babies grew quickly. Her belly rounded with promise, and each morning brought new flutters beneath her skin. Ariana would wake to Lucien's fingers tracing gentle circles across her stomach, his voice whispering poems or nonsense rhymes, whatever he could think of to let their unborn children hear him. You think they'll recognize my voice? He asked one morning, lips brushing her shoulder. They already do, she replied, eyes closed with a smile. They move when they hear you. Lucien kissed her skin and held her tighter. There were nights she couldn't sleep, discomforted by the changes in her body. On those nights, Lucien carried her to the rooftop of his penthouse, where the skyline wrapped around them like an endless canopy. He would wrap her in a blanket, seat her in a padded chair, and quietly read to her under the stars. Sometimes he read business articles just to make her laugh. You're going to bore them in the womb, she teased. They'll be CEO material by birth, he quipped. Their laughter echoed across the empty rooftop. When Ariana's cravings began, Lucien took it as his sacred duty to fulfill them. Pickled pears at midnight? Done. Blueberry pancakes without the blueberries? Hand delivered. Fresh mango slices cut into perfect stars? Delivered in porcelain bowls with mint leaves on top. One afternoon she looked at him and said, You're going to be the kind of father they write about in books. Lucien froze. I've never been called that before, he murmured. But you are, she said. Already. He kissed her then, slow and reverent, as if the word itself, father, still felt like a dream he hadn't dared claim. They painted the nursery together on a Sunday. Ariana insisted on pale lavender and soft yellow. Lucien wanted something calming. They agreed on stars, moons, and a mural painted across the far wall that Ariana drew freehand with charcoal before they painted it in. She stood back, arms crossed, belly prominent, admiring her work. "What do you think?" Lucien stared at the soft outline of a mother cradling two children, a father behind them with arms outstretched toward the sky. "I think it's us," he said, his voice caught. He didn't cry often, not anymore, but this was different. This wasn't pain, it was awe. Ariana stepped beside him, lacing her fingers with his. They didn't need to say more. In her final trimester, Ariana moved into Lucien's penthouse full-time. The guest room transformed into a nursery, and the master bedroom shifted to accommodate the rhythm of her nights. Lucien set up a reclining chair beside the bed for the nights when Ariana couldn't sleep lying flat. He stocked the fridge with fresh soup, bought softer sheets, and installed dimmable lighting everywhere. But more than any of that, he stayed present. Every doctor's appointment, every scan, every kick that startled her from rest, he celebrated like it was a firework in the sky. One morning as they walked through the city park, Ariana holding her lower back and groaning with every other step, an older woman stopped them. "Twins?" she asked knowingly, eyes twinkling. Lucien smiled. "How did you guess?" "Honey," the woman laughed. "It's in her waddle." They all burst into laughter. Later, Ariana clutched his hand and whispered, "She's right. I do waddle like a duck." Lucien kissed her temple. "You waddle like royalty." Her laugh was breathless and beautiful. One rainy evening, Ariana sat curled on the couch while Lucien read aloud from a children's book they planned to keep on the nursery shelf. Halfway through the story, Ariana started crying. He stopped immediately. "What's wrong?" She wiped her eyes. "I never thought I'd have this. A man who reads bedtime stories to babies who aren't even here yet. A man who looks at me like I'm the only thing he ever needed." Lucien put the book down. "I don't just look at you that way," he said. "It's who you are. I've built entire empires. But nothing feels like what I'm building with you." They held each other for a long time, the thunder outside punctuated by soft movements from within her belly. The babies were growing stronger. And so was their love. They made love slowly during her pregnancy, always tender, always patient. Every caress was deliberate, every kiss a confirmation of the journey they had chosen together. Lucien took extra care to make her feel beautiful, not because she needed validation, but because he saw how her body had become a vessel of wonder. "You are my miracle," he whispered one night, lips pressed to her collarbone. "And you are mine," she whispered back. They talked names, though neither wanted to decide too quickly. Lucien liked strong, classic names. Ariana leaned toward ones filled with meaning. One name kept coming back, Nova. "It means new," Ariana said one evening. "Like a new star. Like the way everything feels now." Lucien smiled. "Nova, it is." The second name came days later, when Ariana read a line in a book that struck her heart. "Asher." She looked up. "It means happy." "Blessed." Lucien looked at her, eyes wide. "Perfect." Nova and Asher. Two lights they never expected. Lucien began sketching again, something he hadn't done since his youth. He filled pages with small scenes of a family under the stars, a woman smiling, a man holding two children, a nursery full of laughter. A life he had once thought lost now took shape in pencil and ink. Ariana kept those sketches beside the bed. The night before the due date, a hush fell over the penthouse. Lucien laid beside Ariana, hands resting gently on her belly. She had grown so full, her breathing slower, her body stretched with purpose. "I'm scared," she whispered in the dark. "Of what?" "That something will go wrong." Lucien turned to her and placed a hand over her heart. "Nothing will happen to you. Or to them, I promise." "And if it does?" she asked, voice cracking. "Then I'll carry every piece of it with you, every tear, every heartbeat. You'll never be alone." She sobbed softly, pulling him close. "Neither will you," she said. And neither of them slept that night. But neither needed to. The sky turned silver before the pain began. Ariana was curled beside Lucien in bed when a tight pressure clamped across her lower belly. She gasped quietly, trying not to wake him. But when the second wave came, Sharper, deeper, her hand instinctively gripped his forearm. Lucien jolted awake. "What's wrong?" She winced. "I think it's time." He sat upright, instantly alert. "How far apart?" 7, maybe 6 minutes, she whispered through clenched teeth. Lucien didn't waste a second. He helped her up gently, supporting her weight as she moved to the bathroom. She leaned over the sink, gripping the edge as another contraction came, stronger this time. Lucien was already on the phone with the doctor, voice firm but anxious. "Yes, she's having them. We're on our way." He helped her into the back seat of the car, draping a soft blanket over her legs, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Just breathe, love. You're doing perfectly." The streets blurred in the rain. Ariana focused on her breathing, on the warmth of his hand over hers. When a contraction tore through her again, she cried out, and Lucien whispered words into her ear, grounding her through every moment. At the hospital, nurses greeted them with urgency and familiarity. Ariana was wheeled through the double doors, while Lucien walked alongside, refusing to let go of her hand. "Is this your first?" a nurse asked gently. He looked down at Ariana's tear-streaked face and nodded. "Yes, all of it." In the delivery room, monitors beeped steadily. A cool breeze from the ceiling vent made Ariana shiver. She gripped the sides of the hospital bed as another contraction pulled through her like a storm tide. Lucien stood by her head, one hand cradling hers, the other brushing damp hair from her forehead. "You've got this," he whispered. "I'm scared," she choked out. "You're the strongest woman I've ever known," he said. "And I'll be here, every breath, every second." She looked at him with eyes wide from both fear and love. The doctor entered, examined her briefly, and gave a small nod. "We're close. The first baby is descending well. You're doing beautifully." Those words were meant to comfort, but Ariana barely heard them. All she could focus on was the fire building in her core, the way her body felt like it was breaking open to make space for something holy. Time blurred. Hours passed in a haze of pain and sweat. Lucien never left her side. He held her hand through every cry, every push. He whispered encouragement, kissed her temple, pressed his forehead against hers when the contractions left her breathless. At one point, when she thought she could push no more, she sobbed, "I can't do this." Lucien cupped her face and said, "Yes, you can. You already are." With one final scream that came from the deepest part of her soul, Ariana bore down. A sharp cry pierced the air, and then another. Lucien's knees nearly gave way. A nurse held up a tiny, pink-skinned baby girl, her fists clenched, mouth wide in protest. Lucien gasped, overcome. She's here." The nurse placed the baby on Ariana's chest. She wept, cradling the small form, her arms shaking. "Nova," she whispered. Lucien kissed both of them, his tears falling freely. "She's beautiful," he breathed. But before they could catch their breath, the doctor spoke again. "Let's welcome the second." Lucien returned to Ariana's side, holding her hand with both of his. "You're amazing," he whispered. "We're halfway there." Ariana gritted her teeth, determined. The pain surged again, and she screamed, this time louder, more primal. Her legs trembled. Lucien pressed a kiss to her forehead, whispering strength into her ear. "Just a little more, love. He's almost here." A few more pushes, more sobs. Then the room filled with another newborn cry, higher pitched, softer, but just as powerful. Lucien watched as a tiny boy was lifted into the air, slippery and pink, his eyes scrunched shut. The nurse smiled. 2 perfect babies. Ariana broke into tears again, her whole body quivering as they placed her son in her arms beside his sister. Lucien knelt beside her, arms around all 3 of them, overwhelmed. "What shall we call him?" a nurse asked gently. Ariana turned her head, her voice a whisper. "Asher." Lucien closed his eyes, heart swelling. Nova and Asher. They stayed like that, mother, father, and newborn twins, wrapped in a quiet joy that no words could contain. After the nurses cleaned and swaddled the babies, Lucien rocked Nova in his arms while Ariana held Asher, their breaths finally settling. Lucien stared at his daughter, then turned to Ariana. "I thought I'd never have this," he said. "I thought it was impossible. You believed in me," she said. "So I believed in us." Asher stirred in her arms. Lucien leaned forward, his lips grazing the baby's tiny forehead. "They're everything," he whispered. Later that evening, when the sun dipped below the city and the room bathed in soft gold light, Ariana dozed with the babies tucked beside her. Lucian sat nearby, watching all three of them. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of breath, promise, and love. He stood, walked to the window, and looked down at the skyline he once thought was the only legacy he could ever leave behind. Now, in this small room, wrapped in cotton blankets and the scent of new life, his real legacy slept peacefully. He turned back, his eyes fixed on Ariana. "You saved me," he whispered. And somehow, even in sleep, she smiled. 2 years later, laughter filled the penthouse. It wasn't the kind of laughter that echoed off marble or spilled from wine glasses at galas. It was the soft, bubbling kind, sticky with baby giggles and toddler squeals, the kind that wove itself into curtains, into floorboards, into the soul of a home. Lucian sat cross-legged on the nursery floor, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. On one side, Nova toddled unsteadily toward him, arms flapping like tiny wings. On the other, Asher gnawed determinedly on a silicone giraffe, his focus absolute. "Come on, sweetheart." "That's it," Lucian encouraged, arms wide. Nova collapsed into his lap with a triumphant squeal, burying her face into his chest. Lucian laughed and kissed the top of her head. Behind them, Ariana leaned against the doorframe, watching them with a heart so full it almost hurt. She was no longer the woman who swept floors with dreams tucked under her uniform. She was a mother, a partner, the love of a man who once thought himself incapable of healing. She carried a mug of warm tea, sipping slowly, her eyes lingering on the two most beautiful contradictions of her life, the billionaire who once lived in silence and the children born from a love everyone else would have doubted. The living room was no longer pristine. It was alive. There were toys in corners, crayon marks on the baseboards, and sticky fingerprints on glass doors. Ariana wouldn't have it any other way. Lucian had stepped away from his company temporarily, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. "There are boardrooms," he told Ariana one day, "and then there's this, and this. This is where I want to be." He spent mornings feeding the twins, afternoons helping with diaper duty, and evenings rocking Nova and Asher to sleep while humming lullabies Ariana once sang in hallways. One quiet night, Lucian stood by the nursery window, watching the city lights flicker. Ariana joined him, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. "They're finally asleep," she murmured. He turned, drawing her close. "Did you ever imagine life like this?" "Only in dreams I didn't dare speak aloud," she said. Lucian held her tighter. "I used to think I had everything, but I was wrong. Everything is what I have now." She looked up, brushing a thumb against his jaw. "You gave me love when I thought I'd never be seen. And now, we have them." They walked into the living room, sitting side by side on the couch. Ariana rested her head on his shoulder. He reached beneath the coffee table and pulled out a small box. "What's that?" she asked. Lucian opened it slowly. Inside was a necklace, simple, gold, with 2 engraved pendants, N and A. "For Nova and Asher," he said. Her hand flew to her mouth. "I wanted you to have something that reminds you every day of the life you created, the hope you carried when I had none." She leaned forward and kissed him, the kind of kiss that says thank you without saying a word. Later, as Ariana tucked the twins into bed, Nova curled tightly like a flower, Asher sprawled like a storm, she whispered, "You are our miracles. Don't ever forget that." Down the hallway, Lucian sat at his desk, pen poised above an open letter. He'd begun writing to his children every week, small reflections, little life lessons. He didn't want to wait until they were old enough to understand. He wanted them to have his voice in ink, something to carry even after he was gone one day. Tonight, he wrote, "Dear Nova and Asher, I once believed I had everything, power, success, respect, but none of it compared to the moment I heard your hearts beat for the first time. That sound rewrote my world. I want you to know this. Love isn't something that always arrives dressed in perfection. Sometimes it shows up quietly. Sometimes it wears a janitor's uniform and sings lullabies in empty halls. But when it finds you, hold on to it. Trust it. Let it grow. It just might give you everything. Love always, Dad." He closed the letter and slipped it into a box already half full of similar notes. Ariana had hers too, one she kept beside the bed, filled with drawings, quotes, and baby photos. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping softly against the glass. Lucian watched it for a moment before heading back to bed. Ariana stirred as he climbed in beside her. "They're okay?" she asked sleepily. He kissed her temple. "Perfect." In the morning, Nova would cry to be changed, Asher would throw his cup, and the cycle would begin again. But in the middle of it all, between the chaos and the calm, was love. Not just the kind that burns brightly in youth, but the kind that endures, that rebuilds, that stays. The kind that had once been impossible. But here it was, wrapped in blankets, in late-night lullabies, in whispered promises that even when broken things heal, they can become something stronger. Have you ever witnessed a love that healed what seemed unfixable? Drop your thoughts below, and if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Love and Twilights. Because somewhere out there, someone needs a reminder that miracles still find the broken, and love, when true, always finds a way.